In June 2026, the query method, it can carry a body, but it's still safe. We might be heading into an era where CDN, getting to witness the moment, a new method.
Every time I design a search API, I get stuck on whether to use get or post. I always end up compromising and just going with post/search.
I get that. With get you can't send complex conditions in a body, but with post you give up caching and idempotency. But that whole dilemma might finally be over. In June 2026, the query method was officially standardized in RFC 10008.
Query, so it's a brand new HTTP method, not get or post.
Right? It's the first new method since patch in RFC 5789, 16 years ago. It can carry a body, but it's still safe, idempotent, and cacheable. Best of both get and post.
That solves literally every problem Sharina's been having.
The classic example of get's limits is Elasticsearch's search. It's honestly got a rough history.
They made it so you could search with a get that carries a body, right?
Technically, the HTTP spec doesn't forbid putting a body on get. The problem is the spec never defines what that body means, so infrastructure in between will sometimes just drop it.
So it's spec legal, but real-world proxies and CDN just won't let it through.
Exactly. That's why Elasticsearch's own docs go out of their way to say post works the same way.
So they added post support just for compatibility.
The query string has its own problem too. It ends up sitting in plain text in browser history and access logs.
And it shows up in the referrer header, so it can leak to external sites too.
If the search conditions contain personal information, that just sits in the logs indefinitely.
So everyone retreats to post/search, but that comes with its own baggage.
Post is explicitly defined in the RFC as unsafe and non-idempotent, meaning it might have side effects, and sending the same request twice could give you a different result.
So even though a search is just a read with no side effects, post doesn't guarantee that at all.
Caching basically doesn't work either, and you can't safely auto-retry on a network failure.
So you switch to post to dodge get's limits, and then you're stuck with a whole different set of limits.
Right? The triple curse of unsafe, non-idempotent, and non-cacheable. There's just never been a real answer for Search API. That's been the situation this whole time. There are basically 4 axes for evaluating an HTTP method: safe, idempotent, cacheable, and whether it can carry a request body.
Get checks 3 of those boxes except body, and post only gets you the body, right?
Right? So with Search API, whichever one you picked, you were always giving something up. But query is the first method that checks all 4 boxes at once.
Carrying a body while also being safe, idempotent, and cacheable, isn't that asking for a bit much?
Not really, that's just what search fundamentally is. The spec finally caught up. Idempotency is the big one, honestly. Even if you retry after a network failure, you're guaranteed no side effects pile up.
Whereas with post, send the same request twice and you have no idea what'll happen.
That means clients and proxies can safely auto-retry, which is a big deal.
So the thing I've been struggling with every time I design a search API just gets solved by a single method. Say I want to use the query method, how do I even know if the server supports it?
There's a new header just for that, accept query. By including it in a response, the server can declare, I accept query.
So the client can check support ahead of time, before it even sends anything.
And it's not just a yes/no, it can also specify which media types it accepts. Using structured field syntax, it lists things like application/JSON.
So you can say JSON only, or XML fine too, pretty fine-grained control.
Right? And here's the important part. Content type is mandatory for query. A request with no content type, or one where it doesn't match the body, gets rejected by the server every time.
So it kills that whole "it kind of just works" ambiguity, right at the spec level.
By fully deferring body interpretation to the media type, it prevents misreading altogether.
That's basically the mirror image of the whole get body gets silently dropped problem.
Yeah, it feels like they built the guardrails in from the start, learning from past mistakes.
Query being cacheable means it can actually be cached on a CDN, right? But if there's a body, how do you even build a cache key?
With traditional GET, the cache key was built from the method plus the URI. Same URL, same GET, same cache comes back. Pretty simple mechanism. With Query, the request body gets folded into the key too, on top of method and URI.
So even the same URL ends up with a different cache entry if the body's different.
Right? So each search condition gets its own cached result, properly separated. Here's the thing though, if the cache layer normalizes too aggressively, it gets dangerous.
Normalizes?
Things like JSON key order or whitespace differences, stuff that doesn't change the meaning. It's done to boost the cache hit rate, but push it too hard and you get accidents.
Wait, so it ends up returning the same cache for what's actually a different query?
Exactly, someone else's search results could come back to you. So normalization design needs real care. Also, Query can use etag and if none match, so you can save bandwidth with a 304 not modified. There's one area where Query could have the biggest impact: GraphQL.
GraphQL, yeah, it does send everything over post, even read queries.
Right? It's a pure data fetch operation, but there was no choice but to use post. Semantically, it's safe and idempotent, but the method just couldn't express that.
So if you send GraphQL read queries over the query method,
we might be heading into an era where CDN can actually cache the response.
GraphQL not playing nice with CDN caching was always called out as a weak point.
The N+1 problem gets talked about a lot, but there's another wall to adoption too. No caching because it's post. That was quietly a pretty big deal.
With REST, GET lets you go through a CDN, but with GraphQL every request hits the origin.
If the query method catches on, there's a real chance we get freed from that constraint.
Sounds like projects already using GraphQL might want to look into migrating to Query.
Beyond GraphQL, there are quite a few places where Query really lands. The top one is definitely Elasticsearch and OpenSearch.
Ah, the search endpoint. That's been a body carrying GET forever, hasn't it?
Right. It's an area that's been making do by exploiting a gap in the spec for years. Migrating to Query is the most natural fit for that use case.
So it finally gets free of the problem where proxies drop the body.
Then there's BI tools and analytics dashboards. They build aggregation conditions dynamically and send them to the server as JSON, right?
Once the filter and grouping conditions get complex, they just don't fit in a URL.
Same goes for admin panel list API. Once search conditions grow to 10 or 20, a query string hits its limit.
Classic enterprise system stuff, tables buried in search conditions.
GeoSearch benefits from Query too. Sending a range specified as GeoJSON makes the payload pretty long.
Complex conditions sent safely in the body and caching still works. Sounds like a lot of people were waiting for this. Can you actually use the query method already?
It really depends on the framework. Honestly, some are way ahead. Others haven't even started. Node.js has native support as of LLHTTP 9.2.0 and later. On Node.js 22 and up, the HTTP parser passes query through without issue.
So that means Express or Koa can just use it as is too.
Right? Once the parser lets it through, it's just a matter of branching on rec method. With Fastify, you register it explicitly through add HTTP method, set has body to true and add query, and you're good.
So the Node.js world is already ready for this.
Spring Framework, on the other hand, hasn't made much progress yet. PR hash 34993 is still open, sitting at status, blocked.
Blocked? Does that mean something's stalling it?
Seems like the plan was to wait for the RFC to be finalized first. I'd expect it to move eventually though. ASP, NET Core added HTTP methods, query in Net 10.
Can you even send a query method from a browser normally?
With the Fetch API, you just write query as a string for method, and it goes through. Fetch URL, method, query, body, write it like that, and that's your request.
So it's basically the same feel as post. Put JSON in the body, set content type.
Right. But there's something to watch out for when you use it cross-origin.
A cores thing.
Query isn't in cores, is safe-listed methods. Only get, head, and post get the privilege of skipping per flight.
So with query, an options request flies first every time.
Yeah, cross-origin always means one extra round trip. That hits latency.
And same origin, I don't need to worry about it.
Right, same origin skips per flight entirely, so you're fine using it as is.
I get why query is nice, but rewriting every existing post/search isn't realistic.
Don't worry about that. You don't need to replace everything. The realistic path is rolling it out gradually, starting with new read type API.
So only new endpoints get query, and the existing ones stay as is.
Exactly. No need to touch what's already working, though there's something worth checking around caching beforehand.
Like CDN or reverse proxy settings.
Right? Whether you can build a cache key that includes the body depends on the vendor's implementation. It's worth verifying whether Cloudflare or Fastly supports it before you adopt this.
No point in it being cacheable if the infra hasn't caught up, right?
One more thing. It helps to set up your monitoring logs so you can aggregate by method.
So you can track the number of query requests over time.
Yeah. You get to see the migration's impact in numbers, and it helps you isolate issues if something goes wrong.
Start small, measure the effect, and expand from there, basically. The query method seems more practical to use than I expected.
If it were me, I'd try it first on a new search API I'm building. If your existing post/search is working fine, there's no rush to rewrite it.
So just cut new endpoints over to query and see how it goes.
Right? Though honestly, CDN and WAF support are still in a transitional phase. Things like cache keys that include the body, or aggregating monitoring logs. The infra side still has to catch up on all of that.
So the spec settled, but the ecosystem's still being built out.
But you know, it's been 16 years since patch, and no new method ever got added. Getting to witness the moment a new method gets added to HTTP is honestly pretty rare.
Maybe that constant compromise between get or post is finally over.
If you ever get the chance to build a new search API, definitely give query a try.